All right, here it is, those of you who have put up with all of the others, hoping that I would eventually get to the science book. The purpose of these videos, I have received a few emails and posts asking about what was the main difference between the first edition of Differentiated Instruction with Menu Science and the second edition. I like to think that there's a significant difference, but if there's anything that you absolutely loved in the first one, you will find it in the second one. There's just a whole bunch of different updates. So I wanted to kind of go through in this video and share with you the table of contents so that you can see all of the different menus that are included in the second edition, as well as kind of walk you through what I mean by revamping some of the menus that are already in the book. So what I did is I printed out a copy of the table of contents, and by the way, you're going to love this. I don't think that I mentioned it in the other videos. I should have marked it so I didn't have to go looking for it. But in the new books, the second editions, you will find that in the table of contents, it actually does give you all of the different menus that are in there. Because in the originals, it was not like that. It simply said Earth Science page 101, and you had to go through and try to find what menus were there. So I absolutely love that the table of contents has been updated so that you actually have the names of the menus that are in there. Woo! Okay, so anyway, I printed out that table of contents so we actually have it on one piece of paper. So what we're looking at in the second edition of the 3 through 5 science, there's a total of 29 menus. Of those 29, 13 of the menu topics are completely brand new. The rest of the 16 have been revamped. They've been revamped to look at both local standards here in Texas as well as the national science standards. So you're going to find some topics that were not included in the original just because some of those standards have kind of moved around. If you see a purple dot, that's going to represent a new topic. If there's no dot, that's one of the topics that got revamped. So new for this book: forces, forms of energy, conductors and insulators, electricity. We have inherited traits of plants and animals, food chains, food web, carbon dioxide, oxygen. That one specifically has changed because it used to have that nitrogen cycle in there, and we've kind of changed that a little bit. Environments, environmental changes. We have rapid changes to Earth's surface. That one's the fun one with volcanoes and earthquakes and such. Landforms. Our weather, the Earth, oh my goodness, that should say sun. Holy cow. Okay, anyway, Earth, sun, and moon system. I promise it's right in the book. It's just the way that I type these out real quick. And our planets. So there's some new topics that we did not have in the original, and then some of the ones that I know everybody was using and they definitely appreciated, those topics have remained in. It's just that they have been revamped. So let's start with some of the things that you absolutely loved about the first book. When I had stated that the second editions were going to be coming out, I had at least two or three frantic emails asking, okay, but what about, such and such, is it going to be in the new book? So I wanted to let you know that first of all, the majority of the front material has simply been updated. So if you are someone who absolutely loved your product guidelines, they are still in the new book. This is the original. You're going to be looking at those. You're used to seeing those. One of the biggest difference in the product guidelines is not the fact that they're present, but if you look on the original book in the first editions, let me move that out of your way, there were a total of 12 product guideline cards per page. In the second edition, the font size has been increased to make it a little bit more student friendly, and you're going to notice there's actually only 9 per page. So a little bit bigger. The cards themselves are a little bit bigger. If you're someone who cuts them out and puts them on index cards, they're going to fit really nicely. It's just this one's a little bit more student friendly just because it's a little bit larger. So the product guidelines are all still there. The rubric is the same between the two. It's been updated a little bit here in the new one. Some of the wording has been changed a little bit, but it's going to look very familiar. The free choice proposal forms are included in here. If you loved certain menu formats in the original, let's say you absolutely love tic-tac-toes, you're going to find those in the new one. 258s, those are your menu. You're going to find those in the new one. What's happened here as far as menu formats is I've added some menu formats that I didn't have in the first one. And I'm going to show you some of those so that you can see them. see why specifically I selected some of those. And then I also want to show you what the revamping looks like, because sometimes I didn't even change the format of the menu, but the task or the wording had been changed. Oh, I'm going to back up for a moment and tell you the product guidelines in the original. One of the frustrations that I know some folks had is the reference to, let me see if I can find one, because a lot of people were asking about it, but the reference to the VHS or the reference to a DVD player. That has all been removed here, and all it simply says is it can be recorded. So I tried to phrase the product guideline cards in the second edition to make them stand the test of time, so that you won't have to go back and kind of white things out and write over the top. I never liked doing that when I was in the classroom, so I tried to update that for you. So let's take a look at what the revamping really meant, because I know that you don't necessarily want to go and buy a brand new book when the first book is completely fine, and so that you can kind of see what the differences really are. I'm going to keep the first edition on the left when we do comparisons and the new edition on the right, so that you can kind of see. The first one we're going to look at is a complete revamp, in the sense that the format of the two menus, oh my goodness, I needed some help doing this. The format of the two menus remained the same. I'm going to talk about the States of Matter menu. In the original book, it was a tic-tac-toe, and in our second edition, it also was a tic-tac-toe. But here's some of the big differences that you're going to find. In the original editions, and this is for actually almost any of them, you will see that the titles across the top of each product option tended to focus on the product itself. Make a mobile, design puppets, create a cartoon, etc. What I've done in the new one is I've tried to make it more obvious about what the objective is that's being covered by that square. For example, matter all around us. This is properties of states, and then changing of states. And if you've attended any of my staff development, you know that I talk about the reason why we do our tic-tac-toes in a certain way, so that the children get 3 different topics, which is what you see. So you'll see a repeat of those. So in the updated book, it's going to help you ascertain, make sure that the students are really doing at least 3 products from the 3 different topics. Another big difference is the designation of the free choice. You'll notice here it just says free choice, fill out a proposal form. Do whatever you'd like. And some teachers had written me and said, how can I get my students to be more specific about that? We're doing 3 states of matter. I want to make sure that that's actually what they're doing. So in the new book, you're going to see that the middle square actually does tell us it's matter all around us, and that's what it has to be about. That's because my 2 corners are matter all around us, and that makes it so that when the students go across or down, they get 1 from each of those different topics. So here's some of the rewriting so that you can really see how some of the revamping or wording has changed. For example, this bottom corner has students design a PowerPoint about solids, liquids, and gases and detailed information. You're going to find over here that that is no longer that corner's activity. This one is now completely gone. It's been replaced by a brand new activity that has to do with water being the most common liquid. This activity actually was on the original, but it's changed locations. In the original one, it was a brochure. It's still a brochure, but its area has changed so that as the students go through, this is a better location to keep the challenge at a little bit of a higher level. So sometimes products have changed. Sometimes they have, I'm sorry, I suddenly got distracted by something. I shouldn't do that. Sometimes the products have changed. Sometimes locations have changed. Like this one, we have our make-believe interview. Our make-believe interview with an important gas. And you'll find over here, that actually does not exist anymore. It's been replaced, and rather than an interview, we now have a video, and we're recording a video with a superhero. So it's been completely changed into a brand new type of activity. So by revamping, I really went through each and every one of the tasks and looked at it and said, here's how I want to change it to make it better for the newer menus. You will also find that some of the menus, the formats have changed or been altered a little bit. For that example, I picked the Earth's resources. In the original book, the IRS resources was a list menu. So the students would go through, of course they have all their options. You will notice that all the point values are randomly assigned, meaning, or not randomly assigned, but they are listed in a random way. When you ask, how is this going to help kids in the real world? Making choices, which is what this is all about, is actually a life skill, in the sense that when we look at students who are going through even middle school and high school now, I look at my students, and when I ask them to make a choice, some of them simply stare ahead. They're just not quite sure even how to make a choice because so many people have made choices for them. These types of activities are content-based, but they are focused on the idea of children taking responsibility for their own learning. Responsibility and choice is a life skill. If we start practicing in the classroom, they're more likely to apply it when they get a little bit older. I've had students who struggle even knowing how to choose which college to apply to. They don't even know how to start. And you know, I agree with that. So our second one is going to be our IRS resources, and this is in the second edition. You'll notice it's been changed a little bit. Rather than being one big long list as far as having all of them listed together, what we've done is I've gone through and sorted them into different topics. This one's called a 3-topic list. So we have types of resources, we have products made from resources, and of course we have conservation of resources. So rather than the children simply going through and possibly, in the original edition, possibly avoiding different topics, what will happen here is part of the criteria at the top tells us that the children have to select at least one activity from each of those different areas. So I kind of went through to try to make our IRS resources a lot more specific, meaning I wanted to make sure that if there were 3 different objectives, the children met those 3 objectives through completing the menu. We also have, as far as the menus in general, this book still has, as I mentioned, it still has the 258s, it has the tic-tac-toes, it has the 3-topic list, which I just showed you. It also still has the 1-topic, it has the baseball menus. Which one am I forgetting? Baseball menus. Oh, and it also has the game show menus. Sorry, I'm like all of a sudden. So if there's something you really loved about this one, again, you're going to find it here. But this one has been updated, significantly changed from the original.